Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So tonight I'm going to be making Mexican low carb casserole. I'm kind of just going to do this off the top of my head. So yeah, I'm going to be using ground beef for the base and just some other things that I can find around the kitchen to use up. I'm also going to prep some sourdough biscuits for breakfast tomorrow. I'm going to be making biscuits and gravy. And so really excited about that. I want them to be nice and fermented for the morning. Kind of had a overflow of my sourdough starter earlier. So it's definitely nice and active, nice and ready to go. I think I might also try some sourdough cheese crackers as well. So if we have time, I'll get to that tonight. If not, I'll probably just end up doing that tomorrow. But yeah, so let's get started. So some nights I have more time to put more thought into dinner, or should I also say have more energy to get a little bit more creative, make something a bit more unique. And by unique, I usually don't mean anything overcomplicated, but just something where I can just spend an hour or so in the kitchen preparing a really nice meal for my family. But on a night like tonight, I was getting dinner prepared a little later than I would like to, so I just decided to go with a casserole for tonight. And that's usually my default when I'm kind of in a pinch. I'm trying to get dinner served relatively quickly so that we're not eating so late at night. So tonight I'm making definitely one of my top favorite casseroles. And so this is a low carb and even keto, I believe, casserole. So this is a kind of my take on an enchilada casserole bake. And so for the rice, I'm using riced cauliflower, and then so that's essentially going to act as our rice. And so I'm just getting some ground beef going right now in the skillet. I usually get my ground beef from Walmart. They seem to have the best price for the grass-fed, grass-finished beef, so that is where I usually like to get our beef from. And as far as the veggies, I'm just adding in some diced onion and some diced jalapeno as well. I've also just diced up some garlic cloves as well there. And this bag of riced cauliflower was like super solid, so I ended up having to go on the balcony because the baby was sleeping and I had to like smash it on the ground in order to break it up. So I'm just adding, I think that's a 1 pound bag. We get the bulk 4 pound bag from Costco, so at a really good price. And that's another thing about eating later at night. Usually, most nights, if we're eating kind of late, which honestly, typically dinner is no earlier than like 8 o'clock anyways. That's just kind of how my schedule flows. Though I do wish that, dinner could be earlier. And I definitely will work up to that. But I try to go for like a lower carb dinner, just so we're not, eating a bunch of carbs. That's definitely not the best, especially if you're going to eat later at night. So this was the perfect meal for tonight. So I'm just adding in a bit of tomato sauce. I'm adding in some Rayo's marinara. And so that's going to be part of the base for our sauce. I'm also cubing up about 4 ounces of cream cheese. So this will add a super nice creamy and dreamy texture to the sauce, which really is going to give it like that enchilada, like casserole feel. So I think this was this was either my first or second time making this, but it turned out absolutely delicious. And so I'm just adding in some spices now. Definitely on some nights where I can kind of multitask, like in this case, I was going to get also the biscuits going for the breakfast the following day. It definitely feels nice to get multiple things done in the kitchen at one time. If there's one thing that I've become quite skilled at over the years, it's multitasking. And I think a big part of that is because I was a waitress for most of my career, if you will say. I mean, waitressing definitely is a career, right? Can't say that it's not. And yeah, so I definitely learned a lot of how to multitask, how to move quickly, work quickly. And so that's definitely paying off now that I'm a mom and a wife and have a family to feed. I'm the predominant cooker in the home. So, and I definitely don't mind. I love being in the kitchen. Now, our kitchen is relatively small at the moment, definitely humble beginnings. And, you know, sometimes when I'm filming this, I wish that I could get some better angles because definitely not the best shots. But hey, I'm working with what I have right now. So it will do for this season. And so I'm just getting my biscuits ready now. So I just started by shredding my butter, which is like one of the biggest life hacks in the kitchen, is shredding your butter, because I used to do the whole cube method and I would get kind of frustrated, you know, and it was just more work. Like you have to crush up the big cubes of butter with a fork, which is normally what I'd use, or like a pastry cutter. And so ever since I discovered this method, I'm like, this is genius. And I'm like, why have I not been doing this the entire time? But yeah, so I'm just mixing that with the flour to begin with. And like I said, I am deciding to long ferment these biscuits because I wanted them to just build up as many nutrients as possible for the following day. So yeah, so that's what I am doing here. So I definitely don't make biscuits and gravy often, but this is definitely going to be one of my favorite, like most comforting breakfast meals. So definitely was excited to get this ready and prepared. So I added just a little bit of raw honey. I added some buttermilk, which I usually don't buy buttermilk in store. I tend to just make it from scratch since it's so easy. So if you ever want to make your own buttermilk, the ratio that I use is just 1 cup of milk and 1 tablespoon of distilled vinegar. I believe you can also use apple cider vinegar if you want as well, and that gives a similar result. But yeah, so just setting those aside, getting my baking supplies put away. And yeah, the casserole was ready at this point. So I didn't get the clip, but I did shred some cheese to put on top because definitely need some cheese. I believe I put some cheese in the mixture itself and then I put the rest on top. So that was the result. Bubbly and absolutely delicious. And so I did need to feed my sourdough starter. I kind of had, like I was mentioning earlier in the video, a bit of an accident. And since I've actually transferred my sourdough starter to a bigger jar because, yeah, I thought that jar was going to work. But after a few times, I was like, okay, this is not going to be big enough with the amount that I'm baking. So, yeah, but just got that jar cleaned up a little bit. And then I'm just adding my all-purpose flour and a bit of filtered water to get it to a nice, thick consistency. All right, so it's time to plate up dinner, and this recipe was made in no time. I think between the time that I took preparing it on the stove and in the oven, it was around a half hour, maybe 30 to 40 minutes at most. And just look at that, how creamy and delicious it looks. I think the only thing that would have really made it pop would have been a bit of cilantro, maybe as a garnish, but I didn't have any. Either way, it was still absolutely delicious. So it is the next morning and I am getting right to it. I am grabbing out my biscuits from the night before. Those spent time in the fridge fermenting. And yeah, so I was definitely looking forward to this meal and looking forward to this video as well, because it's nice to, like I said earlier, just be able to get multiple things done at once and kind of plan ahead and prepare ahead. And it's something I don't do, I think, often enough. I try to, and I'm getting better at it. But when you kind of wake up the next day and you're like, okay, I know what I'm making today, this morning, like, and you just kind of have a plan, it just makes your morning that much more, I guess, relaxing, peaceful. And so my husband was with baby girl as well. I definitely cherish and I'm so thankful for the days when he's off, because then I can just kind of focus on whatever tasks, I need to get done in the kitchen. Like for our breakfast, he'll just hang out with her, which is so nice, because my mama's out there, you may know, like your kids, especially young kids. Our baby girl's 8 months old, and they don't play when it comes to wanting your attention, which is completely understandable. So here you see me adding, yes, that is salt that I'm adding on top of the dough. And why is that? Because I forgot to add salt into the batter. And that was obviously a big no-no. I was like, I don't really remember. I guess in that moment I was like, oh shoot, I forgot to add the salt. And so I'm like, well, I guess I'll just try sprinkling it on top and kind of dimpling it into the dough and lightly, gently kneading it in. And so I was like, you got to do what you got to do. I didn't want to overwork the dough though, so I just was hoping for the best. And yeah, mistakes happen sometimes. We forget to add ingredients sometimes. So I just used my bench scraper to cut that out into 8 biscuits, and I'm just kind of gently shaping them with my hands and placing them into the cast iron skillet. I did want them to rest for a bit since they came out of the cold fridge, so you'll see I'm like kind of waiting until the end to throw those into the oven, just so that they can kind of rest and get that chill off of them. Just covering that back up with my plastic wrap and getting ready to get started on our sausage gravy, which is the star of the show for the breakfast this morning. My husband doesn't really eat pork. He'll have bacon from time to time, but usually he opts out for pork, so that was fine because I had an alternative for him. So I don't have a recipe for this pork sausage gravy, but I'm actually in the middle of creating my blog, so I will come up with a recipe and I will put that on my blog, because I usually go for a similar spice profile and flavor profile and consistency and whatnot. So I will put that recipe down on the blog for you guys, because it is absolutely delicious. And what's a morning without your morning coffee? So in the midst of getting the sausage gravy prepared, I'm also preparing our French press coffee. I don't know if you guys have tried those Harmless Harvest coconut water, the sparkling kind, but Costco just recently put them in their warehouses, and so I've been getting them, and they are absolutely delicious. It's like a sparkly coconut soda, and it's, really, really good. Super hydrating, especially for the morning. So for my spices, I believe I'm just going with some salt, black pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, sage powder, umami seasoning, which is, I get that from Whole Foods. I really, really like it. I just put a few different herb blends in there. I may have put some thyme leaves and perhaps some rosemary, but like I said, I will create a recipe and then I'll go ahead and post that on my blog. So more on that coming soon. I haven't yet released the blog. I'm just in the midst of creating it. Just putting my seasonings away. Definitely need to go through my seasonings. I don't know. Is there anybody else that just has like an excess amount of seasonings that you don't really use? I know I'm one of those people. All right, so I got out my ingredients for the sausage gravy. So got some chicken broth that I'm going to put in. I put my flour in just now into the meat mixture. And there goes my chicken broth. Definitely adds a nice depth of flavor. And then I'm going to add in my milk. And yeah, it's a fairly simple sausage gravy recipe. So complemented the biscuits very, very well. So I'm just preparing my husband some beef bacon because he definitely prefers that over pork bacon. Yeah, I like the beef bacon. It's not my favorite. I'll be honest, I'm definitely a pork girl. Like, I love my pork bacon all day, every day, but it is definitely different and it's good. The only place that I've been able to find it is Whole Foods for some reason. So it's kind of odd that more places don't have it. So I'm just brushing on some milk onto my biscuit tops just to help them to get that golden crust on the top. And there they are. They are done, nice and fluffy and delicious. Yeah, those biscuits were really good. And I'll be honest, they would have been even better if I would have remembered to actually put the salt in the dough. It definitely wasn't the same without the salt and the way that I tried to put it back in, but it worked. So yeah, overall, delicious breakfast. And yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys on the next one.